Hi and welcome to my video. I just wanted to show the push into the Soviet Union and the three battle groups and how they fared up. So I started off along this border with a battle group A, which was just a bunch of corps that had zero strength, like zero upgrades. They had no HQ. I basically just sent them to take these three towns and these four towns here. And I was just hoping that if I just push one unit and then use another unit to cut off their supply, push one unit, cut off their, just basically try to sever any of these roads and railroads, to see if my corps could just take them without needing strength to do so. The reason why I did that was so that I could buy more units, so that as the battle was going on, I could add more and more units into the actual battle as I made my pushes, because I was planning on doing some very fast pushes into the Soviet Union, just to see if that would, how that would play out. And if I just mainly focused on using armor and armies, just how much that would be able to push without having strong core units as well. So what happened is they started off there. Then I also had a battle group B, which was all my panzers, followed with a couple of corps just behind them, and all of my medium bombers. I then had battle group C, which was all of my army units, and then a couple of corps that followed behind them, and all of my tactical bombers. And then each one of them, my army had a HQ, my panzers had a HQ, my bombers and tactical bombers had a HQ, and then I just had a fifth HQ which looked after my fighters and a couple of the core units. So once I surrounded these towns, there was a big pocket of Soviet forces here. I actually pushed my armor through these two up into Minsk and surrounded it, completely surrounded it with units. And then instead of attacking using my panzers, I actually hit it with my medium bombers, managed to pull my panzers up into Orsha, completely surrounded Orsha, and then let my infantry and medium bombers deal with Minsk. I then sent off a unit into Gomel, sent one here and one here to cut Gomel off. So it was just two corps. I didn't use very strong forces, I just used basic corps to surround and cut off the supplies, which would then be able to deal with the towns. Meanwhile, my armor continued pushing up into this place here. I completely surrounded it, and then winter hit. As winter hit, I took this town. I sent a couple of units over here. My reinforcements then spawned in, which I managed to spawn into Warsaw, and sent 3 corps back up to here, which helped deal with these towns here. Meanwhile, my armor, as soon as winter ended, pushed up into here. I completely surrounded this area. One of my armored units came up here and finished off this garrison. Then whatever was left over here, I then sent up my 3 mechanized units. Also were available, so I pushed them up. Sent one up here, sent the other 2 down here with a couple of corps. Surrounded this area, pushed up into here, created this new front. These armoured units that were here managed to create this new front. One of my armoured units I sent over here with a mechanized, and another armoured unit I sent up to here. This guy actually started down here somewhere and managed to push his way up to here. This guy started over here and I pushed my way up to here and surrounded this. Because there's no railroads here, once I've taken this, it'll be very hard for them to cross this marshland to try to reclaim this. So I really wanted to make sure that I had this and had a couple of units on this before sending the rest of these units over here to begin the Battle of Moscow. Once these 2 dudes have destroyed this, they will then move up to here and create this new line here. This guy will be over here. This corps will probably just stay here. Maybe a couple of these corps will also come up and just try to defend this spot here. Over here, these guys will probably just try to deal with this guy. This guy will eventually end up back over there, because we don't really want to leave our tanks in this marshland. It's not going to do too well. Once I took Riga, I then brought up my railgun to start dealing with this one here. And once I've taken out this position, these guys will create a new line from here to here, and then push up into here, eventually into here, and then to here, and then just slowly work our way into Leningrad and encircle and defeat this with the help of the Finns. The Finns will then push up into this town here to change their supply line going down towards here. During the winter months, this will actually cut their supply entirely, so that'll help with the Russians not receiving any more reinforcements or extra supply from the UK. Once I've then taken this area, I can then start moving in towards here and then take this. Once I've taken this, that'll completely sever their connection to the UK, which will be good. Then Battle Group B, pretty much just going to fight Moscow. Once Moscow's out of the way, then we can start pushing towards the last objective, which will be here. And Battle Group C basically started off from Warsaw. I used my armies to push all the way to Kiev as fast as I could, then up to here, and then as you can see they're finalized here, and they're getting ready to surround and take this, which will be the last phase before moving down into Stalingrad. I had a bunch of just stragglers that I just kind of left here to defend these towns. I was only like 3 or 4 units, and I had a bunch of corps here which kind of surrounded and encircled these 3 towns. While I was making my very fast push along here, these guys were surrounding a big group of Soviets between these 4 towns, and they couldn't really push into me because I had the town secured, so that gave them no opportunity to try to deal with my weak forces, because they couldn't take the towns and they had a line of units kind of surrounding them. I eventually crushed all these forces and created a new line. Once I defeated Belgrade and Athens, I then got to move my Italian infantry up and my Hungarian infantry up. My Hungarians are now here. My Romanians originally were here and took this town. They then pushed up into here. They're going to start surrounding and taking this town. I've created a front with my Italians that will eventually secure this town, and my Hungarians push down into this and take this port. That'll knock out some more of their supply line, because it is a primary supply objective. Eventually this line will just slowly start to walk its way to here, then maybe even try to push down towards these oil fields, but mainly just getting up to Stalingrad, hopefully help the rest of this army deal with Stalingrad, and then start making a push up towards this town here. I have also been working on joining Turkey to our force with 4 chips in this. Next turn I'm going to add this up to 5, so it'll be a 25% chance of adding 6% or 8%. So hopefully within the next year or 2, Turkey will join my forces, which will open up a new front down here, and then I'll start be able to push them into these oil fields over here to really cripple the Soviets' supplies. Over on this front, I've also been putting ships in here. They have been trying to use some submarines to knock these guys out, but I keep sending them back in, which is also severing their supply from the US. I've been using tactical bombers to help, basically the forces that were along here. I just had my tactical bombers sitting along these towns, bombing them and weakening them so that they couldn't actually make any advances or try to hurt my own units, because as you can see, all of these units at the time all of these guys had 0 upgrades. Like anything that was for any of these cores, any core units, the 3Xs, none of them had upgrades at the time. So if they wanted, they could actually do some damage to my guys, but I used my tactical bombers to try to hit any of their 10 strength units so that they were forced to reinforce or retreat. I didn't try to destroy units, I just tried to weaken units so that they weren't effective against my units. Meanwhile, the armies were the ones that were destroying stuff. They were going into each town and destroying it, move to the next town, destroy it. Eventually these might even be able to, these cores might actually be able to follow up the line and take this town and create an even longer line, and push into here, into the back end of Moscow, and they'll actually be a complete line encircling the entirety of Moscow, and eventually maybe even completely surrounded, but I'm not too sure about that. But the main objective is to take this, push down into Stalingrad. Yeah, so I just wanted to show kind of where I was with Russia. The rest of my fronts, you can just have a brief look over. They managed to take out one of my panzers, so this is going to be a long drawn out battle. Over in Japan, I was very late to trying to take the Pacific, so my guys are kind of all over the place. I've moved my special forces in, taken Bangkok, and started moving down towards Singapore. I'm also bringing in these transport ships now that I've taken Thailand to try to create a new force that'll move up towards Burma. I've got a corps moving down into here and a special forces moving down into here. I've taken the Philippines, except for these odd units here, the American forces that were still there that I have to deal with. I've set up an army unit here that's just going to be for defense. I've got a bunch of garrisons set up in all of my islands. I've taken Guam with a special force unit. I've taken Nauru with a special force unit, set up all my garrisons, and I've taken this with the special forces, then moved to a garrison and sent it up towards Midway. So this special force unit will take Midway with some escorts of these carriers. Sent in some garrisons. Japan's pretty undefended though, but that's okay because if they can't take these islands, they can't take Japan. And then lastly, this was where my main focus was and why I was so behind on the Pacific battles, because I wanted to take Hawaii. So I sent 3 special forces, all of my carriers, majority of my carriers and battleships, and I actually just killed all their battleships, destroyed their fighters and bombers they had here, and took out the one special force unit that was defending Honolulu. Next, I will then turn these into an AV, send them over here, just keep bombing and bombing and bombing, and reducing the supply using my 3 battleships there. If you have at least 2, I think it's 2, I'm not sure if it's 1 or 2, I think you need at least 2 ships surrounding a port, and it will actually reduce its supply down to 0. Once that supply is down to 0, the town will also stop getting supply at some point, and then the battleships hitting them also reduces their supply, so that this unit will eventually become too weak to supply itself, and you can just crush it without too much effort. Over in China, I tried to create a force here which would push up into here, but unfortunately once you get to about here, if you click S, you can see that it's only got 2 supply, and it never changes. So I got my HQ to here, couldn't move it any further. Any units that I tried to push up further ended up getting attrition. I lost one of my cores here because it had 0 supply. I had to pull these units back here. I sent a couple of cores down here, and now I'm just going to use this for defense once the Indians and British start pushing through here. Defending this pass with just an army unit. I'm not going to try to push onto here just yet. My main focus was over here, taking Chengchao. Once I've got that, then I can start pushing it back here, and eventually maybe start moving up or here, start making some more leeway down here. This is all just defense. I'm not really going to try to push on this just yet. Same with here, just another defensive line, not really going to try to make any advances through the north just yet. Over here, nothing too much happening. I've just replaced units with garrisons to avoid war with the USSR. But yeah, that's my game so far.